Good evening, everyone. So nice to see you all. Let's see, first of all, before we get into the topic of the evening, does anybody have any questions from last week? Does anybody remember what we spoke about last week? Who both remembers and has a question? I guess that's the main point. Some of you guys still don't have your cameras on. Come on, you don't want any marked absent. Don't worry, I won't be like a creeper and stare at you. This is all for attendance. No questions from last time? Okay. So very, very quick review of the things we talked about last time, because the classes, they have a logical progression of ideas that follow each other. We said that there are three fundamental primary principles to start off understanding Judaism. One is the idea of being a seeker of truth. You want to know what's true. You want to search for it. You want to hunt for it. You got to be obsessed by it, which means you have to be a critical thinker. You have to ask questions. You have to be humble intellectually, which all of that leads to trying to find out what's true and not assuming you already know it. Then we said the most important truth to know is there a God who created us for a purpose? Sometimes people just say it as their God. Sometimes people just say it is what's the meaning of life? What's our purpose? Why are we here? Both of those are perfectly legitimate answers, but really the full answer is there a purposeful God who created us for a purpose? That's the full expression of the answer. And then the third thing we said was, and the way, the instructions on how to fulfill that purpose, that is what we call Torah. It's what Torah is. Torah is the instruction manual. Horaot, instructions. Torat Chaim, the manual for life. Good. Okay, so that was all last time, right? That was like a, 90-second review of the entire class? Good. So now we're going to continue with what is that purpose, right? What is the purpose of life according to Judaism? We're going to explore that today. So what do you guys think? Who would like to, you can either unmute yourself and type in the chat, whichever is most comfortable for you. What do you think the purpose of life is according to Judaism?
I believe the purpose of life is to fulfill your potential of who you could be. Like, let's say you were to reach like this level in Judaism and someone else is able to reach here. If you reach here, you basically did your thing, you know?
Okay, so Benjamin has a beautiful answer. He says your purpose in life is to try to reach the potential you were created with. And we're not comparing to someone else's potential, right, Benjamin? You're comparing it to your potential. Benjamin, that is a beautiful answer. I love your answer. And it's not wrong. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to go underneath it. In other words, all I have to do now, Benjamin, to go deeper is to ask you the following question. Why? Why do you want, like, why, what will you get? What's the point of fulfilling your potential? I love what you said. It's beautiful. Now let's dig deeper. Why?
I don't know.
That's okay. You started us off very nicely. Nothing to be embarrassed about at all. It's a great answer. But we're digging. And why do that? What do you guys think? Why are we here? What were we created for? Why did Hashem create us according to Torah, according to Judaism?
To change the world, probably.
Also a good answer. Not exactly the same as Benjamin's answer, Maximilian's answer, but it's also excellent. I would call them perhaps parallel answers. Benjamin's answer might be something along the lines of, I have to change myself for the better. And Maximilian's answer might be, I need to change the world for the better. Are they both true? Yep. Definitely true. But why? Why? What are we trying to get? Why are we trying to make ourselves better, the world better?
Because if we change ourselves better, we know what's best for us, and then we could see what's best for everyone else. We could make a survey, we could make a podcast, we could do Zoom calls like we're doing right now, or stuff like that. Like people could put petitions, or like for example, like this famous person just makes something new, that person could inherit what they're doing in their life, and they could be a better, bigger person than themselves. That's why.
All true and all very valuable. But why? Why does Hashem want us to do those things? I'm not playing a game. I'm not playing a game. We're digging. Your answers are great. We're digging. Sorry, who's speaking?
Sarah.
Sarah, there you go. Go ahead.
I think it's to find fulfillment in life.
That's great. That's such a beautiful answer. Let's try to take Sarah's answer, which I think is the closest one because it's deeper. It's deeper than, right? Benjamin and Maximilian's answers were great. Like, let's call them like level 1 answers. Now Sarah's digging underneath. She's trying to find what's under level 1, like basement, you know?
Can I give another
foundation? Well, hold on. Let's work with Sarah's answer for a second, and then I want to hear what you have to say on it because Sarah's got the right approach, right? She took what you guys said and she dug down. She says, you want to get them to have a fulfilled life. Amazing. So Maximo, what do you want to add to that?
I agree with Sarah. Probably maybe to be happier.
Ooh, so we got fulfillment, we got happiness. Yeah, those are really, really good answers. Let's go even, like you're almost there. You're like millimeters from the bottom, from the foundation, from the starting point. You're excellent answers. If we didn't go any further, we could work with those answers. Like we could teach the whole class with what you've said so far, right? But I want to really take it to the maximum. Okay, let's give you guys maybe 1 or 2 more tries, and then I'm going to tell you how the rabbis explain it. But you guys are doing great. And I'm not just saying that to make you feel better. If the answers were stupid, don't worry, I would tell you they were stupid. I wouldn't say stupid because that's mean, but I would tell you that you're wrong. You guys are doing well. Who can dig just a drop? Sarah almost was there. She's right, like I'm just almost like it's touching it. You're like right there. Okay, so I'll help you out. So if you take a look, there's different rabbis express this in different ways. I think the most clear, precise, and concise way of explaining it is from one of my top 3 favorite rabbis of all time, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, also called by his acronym Ramchal. He was an Italian rabbi from the early 1700s. I think he died like 1720 or 30 or 40, around those years. I forget exactly off the top of my head. And Rabbi Luzzatto, who he's one of the most famous rabbi authors of the past 500 years. Lots of his books are on the shelves in the yeshivas. And he says it like this in one of his most famous book, arguably his most famous book, Mesilat Yesharim, the Path of the Just. He writes right at the beginning of chapter 1. He says, the rabbis teach us, Loi nivra odom elo, humanity was only created, right? This is the purpose of creation. This is like the 3rd or 4th sentence of chapter 1, right? He's right at almost the very first words. He says, the purpose of creation of humanity by Hashem is what? Lehis'aneg al Hashem, to get pleasure from God. Ulehanot miziv shchinato, and to get, and that's another word for pleasure, to get maybe fulfillment, meaning, pleasure, happiness, joy, some way of, we're not really sure exactly how to translate it, but something to do with pleasure from the radiance of his presence, right? Okay, really nice, beautiful words, and his words are very deep, but in very simple terms, according to Judaism, the purpose of life is to get the most possible pleasure you can out of life. We were created for pleasure, the ultimate pleasure. Now, what Sarah Maximilian said, which was meaning and happiness, is not a contradiction to pleasure at all. Those are different ways of understanding the highest levels of happiness, of pleasure, because there's lots of different kinds of pleasures. And this is where you have to be careful, because you have lower level pleasures and higher level pleasures. You have authentic, real, deep, meaningful pleasures, but you also have surface, short-term, selfish, addictive pleasures, okay? We, of course, and obviously the rabbis are going to teach us this, we were created not for the selfish, short-term, addictive pleasures, but for the long-term, meaningful, great, ultimate, authentic pleasures. So we're going to try to do now is to understand the levels of pleasures, of which there are three big divisions. You have the bottom pleasure, medium pleasure, and highest pleasure. And even within those bottom, medium, and highest, there's authentic, real version of it. That's the pleasure you want. But you have to be careful. There's a counterfeit. There's a fake, false version of each of the levels. So let me guys ask you a question. I know some of you had a little bit of education or you grew up in traditional homes. You've seen some stuff. So what do we call in Judaism the part of us that's trying to make us do evil or do the wrong thing? What do we call that part of us?
Yetzer Hara.
Yetzer Hara. Right, very good. Who was that? Was that
Both of them.
Okay, excellent. Right, Yetzer Hara. Right, so let's translate. Yetzer means like drive or like the way you're leaning, the way you're going. Hara, the evil drive, the evil inclination. You're going in that way. You're leaning in that direction. So that's true, but it's not the most sophisticated answer. We can get more sophisticated. So I'm going to introduce you. While I'm quoting rabbis, let me actually just put them in the chat so you can see them. So the first quote was Ramchal in Mesilat Yasharim. That was the first quote. Now, the second quote is from Ramban. Right, Ramban, which is also called, if you ever take in school, Nachmanides. I think it's spelled something like that. The Ramban Nachmanides, Rabbi Moshe, the son of Nachman, from the years 1200-ish. So it's about 800 years ago. So the Ramban says the following in his commentary on the Torah, where it says Hashem created something and it was good, right? It was good, Tov. So he discusses the difference between Tov and Ra. What is Tov? Good, Yetzer Tov, right? The drive to do good. And Ra, evil, Yetzer Hara, the drive to do bad. He says, it doesn't just mean good and bad. It's really something more sophisticated. He says, really, it's Yetzer means a drive for pleasure. Yetzer means a drive for pleasure. So Yetzer Hara is a particular pleasure drive, and Yetzer HaTov is a different pleasure drive, right? We're talking about pleasure today. So what is Ra pleasure? What is Ra? Evil. Evil. Is it very evil? Like what is evil? So Ramban explains. Ra means pleasure that is selfish, short-term, and ignores past, present, or future. It's about me now. Only me, only now. That's Ra, which is one of my rabbis said, if you want to see real Ra, you want to see the ultimate Ra, look in a crib. Babies are pure Ra. Now, when you first hear that, you go, what are you talking about, Rabbi? Babies are evil? When I look in the crib and I see like my baby brother, he's got like a little swastika in one hand and a hammer and sickle in the other. And he's like going at the same time, like Heil Hitler and Stalin is the best, like, what are your babies are evil? No. Not evil like you're thinking of evil as like bloody fangs and murder and God forbid terrible things. Just evil as in what the word in Hebrew, Ra, what it means at its core. It's about me now. And that's what babies are. Babies are pure me now, me now. They don't know about other people. They don't know about the past. They don't know about the future. They're hungry, they cry. They're wet, they cry. They're tired, they cry. They don't think about their parents' needs. Oh, mommy and daddy are tired. They have no concept of thinking of anyone else yet. I'm not blaming them. They haven't matured yet. There are some scientists say that I shouldn't say some. The scientists say that babies until a certain age, it's like 3 months or something. It's pretty young. They don't even realize there's anyone else in the world. They think they're the only people that exists in the whole world. I know some people who dated people like that. Because even though they're not babies anymore, they still think like babies. Uh-oh. Rachel, you're laughing too much. I don't know. It looks like you may have seen something like that. Okay. So that's Ra, me now. So what's Tov? Tov is also a drive for pleasure. But it's a drive for pleasure that's not only me now. Yes, it's true. It's me and now. But it's also others, past, future, everything. The totality of pleasure. So every type of pleasure, we're going to discuss 3 levels of pleasure. And in each level, the real authentic pleasure is Yetzer HaTov. The Yetzer HaTov real version of the pleasure. The one that Hashem created us for. And then there's the Yetzer Hara version of the pleasure, which is our challenge to not fall to that. To overcome the Yetzer Hara and instead do Yetzer Tov. It's all pleasure. The Yetzer Tov is also about pleasure. Did you ever hear people say that Judaism is about sacrifice? Did you ever hear that sacrifice is an important part of Judaism? Has anyone, show of hands, has anyone ever heard the idea that sacrifice is an important part of Judaism? A few of you. I'm going to tell you right now that depending on what you mean by the word sacrifice, it's not true at all. There's no such thing as sacrifice in Judaism. It doesn't exist. And depending on what you mean by the word. So let me explain. What is a true, authentic sacrifice? Let's give an example, right? How many of you guys have ever, by show of hands, how many of you have ever studied for a test? Almost everybody. Good, thank God. Okay, we got good hard worker things. Okay, excellent. Now, is studying for a test a sacrifice? Kind of, depending on what you mean. What are you giving up when you study? When you take the time to study, what are you giving up?
Your own time.
Well, what else could you have done with that time that you would rather
Hang
do
out
instead
with
of
your
studying?
friends.
Okay.
You could learn some
Go
Torah.
out.
Holy Jews learning Torah. Right? But good. The point is you could do something else at that time.
Sorry, I accidentally got disconnected.
No worries. Just let Diana know in case, so she makes sure that she knows you're here. Right? When you study, you could have been doing other things with that time. You could have been sleeping. You could have been playing a game. You could have been reading a book. You could have been watching a show or a movie. You could have been hanging out and talking to friends. You could have been doing anything else that you wanted to do. The point is you didn't want to study. You wanted to do something else. But you sacrificed, you gave up the other thing, right? Ethan, can you please mute yourself? You have background noise. Ethan, mute. Diana, can you mute Ethan, please? Thank you so much. Guys, I gotta be careful with that background noise. Okay, I'm not blaming you. It happens to me too. It happens to the best of us. The age of Zoom, you know? Anyway, right, so sacrifice means you give up something. I gave up whatever else I wanted to do at that time. But in theory, what are you getting out of studying?
Good grades, knowledge, yeah.
Good, right? At least you're getting good grades. But hopefully you're getting knowledge also, right? Depending
We
if you
think that
care.
we're getting good grades.
You hope so, right?
But you never know what the teacher's giving us on that test.
True. And that's why that's the problem with sacrifice. The problem is that you don't know for sure you're gonna get what you want. But the reason we sacrifice is not because we want to give up something. The reason we sacrifice is because we want to get something else that's more valuable. Whether it's the knowledge or the good grades. If you're a mature person and not a baby, you realize that giving up, that hour of free time so that I could get good grades is worth it. I'm getting something that's more valuable. So there's really no such thing as sacrifice. It's really just investment. If I give you a great deal, give me $1,000 right now, and in a year, I'll give you $10,000. Is that good investment for 1 year?
No.
Of course it's good investment for 1 year. 10 times your money in 1 year? If you could be a person who gets 10 times money in 1 year, you will be a billionaire in no time. Everybody in the world will invest in you. You know what's called a normal good investment? Is 7% above inflation, 7% per year. That means if you give me $1,000 and 1 year later, if there was no inflation, 1 year later, I give you $1,000 and $70. That's called a decent investment. Okay? This is, I'm giving you a 10 times more. That's 1,000%, not 7%, right? It's absurdly good investment. You never heard of such an investment, okay? So if you give up $1,000 to me, you wouldn't call it a sacrifice. You would, but it is, because you could have done many things with that $1,000. You could have bought yourself something. You could have went out with your friends. You could have went on vacation. But the reason you gave it up is not because you didn't want the $1,000. The reason you gave it up is because you're going to get $10,000 at the end of the year. There's no such thing as sacrifice in Judaism. It's about understanding investments. What are you getting? So anytime in the Torah it says, don't do this, don't do that, it's not because Jews want to be miserable. No, it's because we believe that if you give up this, you're going to get 10 times more, 100 times more, infinitely more. It's investment. You're getting more out of it than you gave up.
Marcel.
That is the idea. Okay, so now, Yetzer Hara, Yetzer Tov. Each version of pleasure has Yetzer Hara. Yetzer Hara doesn't know from sacrifice. Yetzer Hara doesn't know from investment. Yetzer Hara says, just feed me now, I don't care. Yetzer Tov says, maybe we should wait. Don't have this pleasure right now. Get a bigger pleasure later. Bigger, much bigger. Okay, so let's go through the 3 levels. Anybody have any questions on this side? I've set the stage. Now we can actually go through each of the pleasures. Okay, if you haven't written your name in the chat, or even if you have, just throw it in again, right? Just to make sure that the internet knows you're here, and also cameras on. Don't turn them back off.
Guys, I need your cameras on, otherwise I cannot mark you.
In case it's not clear, the cameras must be on the entirety of the class. It's not on high and turn off again. Okay? Good. That's how Zoom classes work. I do the same thing at Rage. All right. Good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through each of the 3 levels, and we're going to explain what they are, the real Yetzer Tov, authentic investment version of it, the adult version of the pleasure, not the childish version. And we'll also explain the counterfeit, the short-term, selfish, childish, raw, evil version of the pleasure. And there's 3 basic levels: low, bottom, medium, and high. Now, the bottom pleasure, it doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that the other ones are higher. Maybe I shouldn't call it bottom. Bottom sounds negative. We're going to call it level 1, level 2, level 3. I like that better. I don't want you to think that I'm attacking the lowest level of pleasure. It's great. It's just there's higher ones. Okay. So the lowest level, does anybody have any guess what the lowest level of pleasure might be? Level out of 3 levels. What is the lowest level of pleasure that we have in our existence? What would you guys guess it would be?
Instantaneous.
Sorry, say it again.
Instantaneous.
It's not really relevant whether it's instantaneous, unless it's only instantaneous, and then it could be Yetzer Hara. But I'm talking about, not the speed of it, but what type of pleasure. So somebody mentioned to me, they did it directly, so they might want to be saying it privately, so I won't say their name. But somebody said maybe drugs. No, because drugs are not a category of pleasure. They're a specific thing. Fidelity is also specific. I don't want a specific pleasure. You can list 1,000 pleasures. Food, sex, everything. Just list them all. No. Give me a category. Give me a principle of pleasure.
Family.
Family is better because it's a little more abstract. But it's also it's better, but it's also within a larger category. Depending on others for our happiness, that's going to be, depending on others for happiness is actually going to be part of the counterfeit of level 3. We're still level 1. Pleasures from this world, says Isaac. Good. Isaac, what does that mean from this world? I like how you said that. But can you be more specific? Oh no, Kayla's phone is going to die. Iskadal viskada shmei rabu. Your phone should rest in peace.
Amen.
Somebody said amen. Okay, guys, what does it mean? Isaac said, I think very nicely, he's in the right direction. It's pleasures of this world. Good. So how do you, let me help you. How do you experience a pleasure in this world? Pleasures that we only experience in this life? Isaac, not exactly, although you're in the right area, but it's not clear enough yet, because there's pleasures that you could have in this life that are not the lowest level. Level 1. Guys, how do you experience pleasures of this world? With what do you experience it? Temporary pleasures? That's true. They are temporary. The 5 senses, good. Rachel, animalistic soul, good. Right? Excellent. Right? So animalistic soul is a little more mystical, Kabbalistic. Ah, there you go. Materialistic. Good, 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 good. So between Rachel and Jade and Daniela, we were getting it, right? It's things that are temporary, which things that you experience with your 5 senses. They're materialistic, which spiritually speaking means you feel it with your animal soul. But let's keep it a little more just purely physical. We don't have to bring the soul into this right now. We will, but not this moment. It just means physical pleasures, material pleasures, things you experience with your body, your senses. Does it taste good? It's a physical pleasure. Does it smell good? It's a physical pleasure. Does it feel good? You feel like you're in a science class? That's a big compliment. I love science. It means we're thinking, being rational, right? Okay, so any physical pleasure you have with your body, with your senses, is lowest level. Instant gratification, it can be, Sarah, it can be. But I think instant gratification is where you're going to the dark side, to use a Star Wars term, right? So going to the Yetzer Hara version of the physical pleasure. Because there is a Yetzer Tov version of physical pleasure. There's a real, authentic physical pleasure, and then there's the selfish, short-term version of it, which is instant gratification, temporary, etc. Okay, so what does it mean to have a physical pleasure that's like a high-level physical pleasure? That's Yetzer Tov, the good, authentic physical pleasure, which Hashem wants us to have. The rabbis in the Talmud say that after we die, one of the questions they're going to ask us in heaven is, did you enjoy my world? The way that one of my rabbis said it is, did you ski my Alps? Did you see my coral reefs? Did you enjoy this delicious food? Did you see a sunset? Like this physical thing, see, smell. Did you hear Beethoven? Did you hear the beautiful music or the birds, right? I don't mean the band, the birds. I mean actual physical birds. Okay. So how do we get this physical pleasure in such a high level way that Torah wants us to get, that Hashem has created us for? So let me give you a mashal, a analogy, and then you'll be able to see how this works in all life. Has anyone here, by the way, did any of you guys do birthright yet? Or are you too young for birthright? Is anyone here 18 or over? No one. You're all still 17. Okay, or less. Okay, so birthright's not an issue for you yet. So in birthright, what they often do is they'll teach the people who come. They'll bring them to a winery, and they'll do a wine tasting course. So lots of people, lots of Jews who have gone to Israel and birthright have taken a wine tasting course. So how does a wine tasting course go? Simple version. You pick up the glass. You look at it in the light, you smell it, you swish it around in the cup, you smell it again, you put a little bit in your mouth, you put it all around the tip of your tongue, the back of your tongue, the sides, cheeks, the roof of your mouth, the floor of your mouth. You get your whole mouth, the back of your throat, like you're brushing your teeth, get the whole experience of the wine. And then if you're a wine taster, you're going to be drinking a lot of wine, so you spit the wine out so you don't get drunk, because you're going to be tasting like 20, 30 wines. But if you're just having for Shabbat or at the restaurant with your family or something, so you sip the wine and then you drink it, you enjoy it. Let the alcohol have a little bit of alcohol in the wine, have a nice positive effect. Right, as the rabbis say, Nichnas yayin yotze sod, the wine goes in, the secrets come out, right? Who your true self is could sometimes be revealed by healthy, responsible drinking at the right time in the right place. That's why we use
Rabbi,
wine.
I'm so sorry to stop you in the middle, guys. Just make sure you're all on video, okay? Thank you.
No problem, Diana. You can stop me anytime, of course. So if you're a wine expert, you spent a lot of time learning how to test wine, right? You actually get more pleasure from the same cup of wine than I would. I'm not an expert. because you're taking the time, you're experiencing it, you're thinking about each component, the color, the texture, the flavor, the smoothness, the this, that, the other thing. And so the very same physical pleasure, you actually get more pleasure out of it, right? Because you become an expert. In French, the word they use for a wine expert, right, is a connoisseur, right? It's just, oh, fancy French word, blah, blah, connoisseur. Oh, here's the cheese, wave the white flag, oh my God, you know? All right. All physical pleasures are like this. It's not just wine. Any physical pleasure you could imagine. It could be a cup of coffee, it could be music, it could be any consumed item. It could be, you know, the pleasures between husband and wife, right? All of the different pleasures that exist in the world, if you take the time to think about them, appreciate them, not rush them, you will actually get much more pleasure from the very same physical experience than the person next to you does, who's not taking the time to become an expert in this pleasure. And this is why one of the greatest gifts the rabbis gave us is the idea of a bracha. You think bracha, saying a blessing before you consume a piece of food, right? And we have brachas for other things as well. What's the point of a bracha? So like I take my cup of coffee, instead of taking my cup and just slurping it and moving on, I stop, I pay attention, look at this coffee. Oh my, it's a gift from Hashem. It's so nice, smells so good. Baruch atah Hashem, I say a bracha. Oh, thank you. And I enjoy the thing that I'm having with, you know, how many people are running to work, running to school with their cup of coffee? They buy it from Starbucks for like, you know, $19,000 or whatever ridiculous price for a cup of coffee. And as they're rushing to work, they're just sucking it down from this big fat cup, not even paying attention, not even enjoying it. You spend so much money, like enjoy your cup of coffee. Lots of all pleasures, all physical pleasures are like this. Okay, so what's the Yetzer Hara version? What is the right? So Yetzer Hara says like this. To become an expert at physical pleasure, it takes a lot of time and attention, focus, it's effort. That's hard. I'm too lazy, Yetzer Hara says. I don't want to spend so much time, energy, and effort to enjoy my physical pleasure. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to eat a lot of it, right? Imagine one piece of chocolate cake. I love chocolate cake. I love chocolate in general, right? It's so delicious. One piece of chocolate is so good. So that means if I eat the entire cake, that must be 20 times better, right? One of us has experienced that it doesn't work. If you eat the entire chocolate cake, like there's a switch. It goes from first bite or two, and sometime later it's like like it's nauseating. You can't even force yourself to stick another piece of chocolate in your mouth. You're gonna vomit. Oh, I just feel sick, and then you feel sick about yourself. What's wrong with me? I just had 17 million calories of chocolate. Oh my God, I gotta fit into my clothes tomorrow. What am I doing? All physical pleasures are like that too. Overindulgence, just gratification, just more. So Yetzer Hara physical pleasure is just indulgence. It's just gluttony. Just eat more, do more, have more. Spend all my time doing this. Real physical pleasure is the right place, the right time, the right amount, and pay attention. Become an expert. Really enjoy it. What do you see as the physical consequences? A person who does physical pleasure, Yetzer Tov, generally is healthy. Generally. Obviously, only Hashem knows if you'll be healthy or sick. But as a general rule, right? They have their body is in the proper health. Whether they have more fat or less fat under the skin is not what I'm talking about. It's the right amount of fat for their genetics, right? It's the right health, enough sleep, able to move, be strong and flexible and healthy. But someone who is addicted, whether it's to drugs or whether it's to food or whether it's to any other physical pleasure, you see the results. They're tired, they're sick, they can't think straight, they're falling apart, right? Their body has way more fat than genetically they're supposed to have for health, right? All of the terrible, God forbid, we should never know such things, health problems that come with this kind of a lifestyle. We see with in front of our eyes, right? Proper, healthy balance of physical life. Enjoy it. It's pleasurable, but the right amount, the right time, the right place, and with paying attention to it. You can enjoy life and be healthy at the same time. And by the way, people who are overindulging, I know I've done it. I've had too much sugar many times in my life, unfortunately, as an example. But what ends up happening is you're not even enjoying it. While you're doing it, you're saying to yourself, I can't believe I'm doing this. Why can't I stop? You're a slave to the physical pleasure, and you're not even enjoying it. You're addicted to it. That's addiction. Instead of being addicted to crack, you're addicted to, Coca-Cola. All right. Hashem should protect us.
Amen.
Any questions? Thank you for the amens. Any questions on physical pleasure, how to get it correctly, and what Yetzer Hara to watch out for? Any questions? That's level 1. That's the lowest level. No, we're good? Okay. So level 2, there's 2 and 3, right? Level 2 is, if level 1 was physical pleasure, level 2 is emotional pleasure, right? And what is the number one, guys, what do you think is the number one emotional pleasure that everyone always talks about and the Torah agrees with?
What was the question?
What is the number one, emotional pleasure? What is the number one emotional pleasure that we all want? We need.
The love between a father or the son.
Give me one word.
What?
Love.
One word,
Love.
one word.
Love.
We all want and need love. Whether it's between parent and child, brother and sister, friends, you and yourself, you and Hashem, right? It's about love. We all want love. So, you won't be shocked to realize that there is a clear definition of the pleasure of love. Just like the pleasure of the physical pleasure is very clearly defined, whatever you feel with your body and your 5 senses. There's also a clear definition for the pleasure of love in Judaism. I don't know if you realize, you think love is something, you can't define it. No. Judaism defines everything. That's one of the major purposes of Torah, is to help us have clarity of understanding what something is. So I'm going to share with you, there's a few parts to it. I'm not going to go through all the parts because that would take its own class, but I'll share with you one of the most important parts to help you to start thinking about it. Love is the emotional pleasure you feel when you focus on the positive qualities of someone or something. Okay? If you're not taking notes, that means you're not really interested in remembering. Unless you have a photographic memory, if you're not taking notes, you're not really interested in remembering what we're saying here.
Can you repeat it, please? Sorry.
I will, absolutely. And also this is being recorded, so you can always watch this again. Okay? Love is the pleasure, is emotional. Love is the emotional pleasure you feel when you focus on the positive qualities of someone or something. When you pay attention to and focus upon what is positive about someone or something, and you really are focused on it, that will awaken within you an emotion of love. When I was looking at my wife before we were married to say, I want to marry this woman, one of the things that I took my time doing is paying attention to her positive qualities, of which she has many. And I looked and I said, she's so smart, courageous, strong, she's well organized in her thinking, in her life. She's a Yorei Shamayim, she fears heaven, she's got good quality of fear of God in her life, religious quality. And I'm paying attention to these things, and I'm like, yeah, this is an awesome woman. I want to have her in my life, right? As I keep paying attention and focusing on these things, awakens this emotion of love. So love takes time. The idea of falling in love is not really a Jewish idea. We'll talk about it we'll talk about it a little bit. Rachel, you have a question?
Sorry, yeah. Doesn't that kind of like don't you also pay attention like to things that you don't like in a person to know. Like sometimes you just pay attention to all the positive things that you cloud your judgment, and you don't pay attention that this person may not be so strong and like other things that are also important to you.
Of course, that's not a contradiction, because paying attention to what's wrong with somebody, because let's say if it's a potential husband or wife, you need to know, like, is the good that I see worth the bad that I see? Because sometimes you could say no, right? You could say, oh, he's so nice to his mother. Yeah, but he, you know, he's got his backyard is filled with people that he murdered and buried. Okay, so maybe, you know, like he's good. He loves his mother. That's important. But he's an axe murderer. Okay, fine. I'll say no, right? I hope you'll say no. You'll say no. Say no. Okay, so of course, love doesn't mean you don't notice what's wrong with a person. Love just says you're focused on what's good about them. You still notice. In fact, I'll go further. Rachel, I'll ask you, since you answered so nicely. Rachel, who do you think in this world knows more about your things that you need to work on that are not perfect about you? Who knows more than anyone else in the world what you need to work on to be a better person?
Shem.
I said in this world.
My parents?
Of course. Rachel, do your parents love you?
Yes.
Of course, right? So
I hope.
you see, it's not I'm not worried about it. You see, it's not a contradiction. You see, it's not a contradiction, right? You can love someone, but in fact, how many of you have ever heard, raise your hands, how many ever heard the idea that love is blind? Raise your hand if you ever heard the idea love is blind. That is a lie. A lie. Love is not blind. Love is the opposite of blind. Love is a magnifying glass. Love, you see everything about the person because you're paying attention carefully to them. Love just says don't focus on what's bad about them. You notice and you'll deal with it, but you're really paying attention and focusing on what's good about them. You know what's really blind? Is the Yetzer Hara of love, the wrong part of love, which is lust or infatuation. Lust and infatuation is where I don't even need to know anything about you, because it's not about you, it's about what you can do for me. It's about taking. Love is about giving, understanding, and knowing. Lust and infatuation is about taking and completely uncaring about the other person. You know, there was once a rabbi, he said to his student, sorry, I see some questions in the chat. Let me just answer them. When you get too attached, you get blinded. Yeah, oh, very good. That's what I'm talking about. That's why, by the way, Sarah, what you're pointing out is so important. That's why the rabbis say that you need, it's a very important Jewish idea that you don't touch the person until you get married to them, right? Why? Because Jews don't want us to have pleasure? No, the opposite. Judaism wants us to have the most pleasure. It's that because when we have physical touch, which is so pleasurable, it blinds us. Instead of going, oh, the person, they have some issues, maybe I should get married to them. Instead we go, oh, I felt so good, right? So we have to, you have to kind of save the physical pleasure for later. Pay attention to the person. Oh, they got these good qualities. Oh, okay, they also have these qualities not so good. Is it worth it? Is it something, right? Can you be blinded by love? Never. You can never be blinded by love. Love is a magnifying glass. What you might be referring to, which I would agree with, is that love can make you say, I know exactly what's wrong with you, but I'm just not focusing on it. It's not where I want to pay my energy and attention. That doesn't mean I'm blind. It just means that I've decided to not pay attention to it. And you could do that. You could do that with children, with spouse, with friends. Sometimes, just a Jew on the street. You say, okay, they're not perfect. Am I perfect? I'm not perfect. They're not perfect too. It's okay. I'm not going to drive them crazy. You push aside the bad things when you know deep down it ain't good. I'm not sure entirely what you mean by that. We'll have to speak about that maybe some more later. But I think the principles that I'm sharing with are clear. Love is when you pay more attention to the person and you give to them. And lust and infatuation is when you pay less attention about the person and you're taking from them. So there was once a rabbi, he said to his student, do you love fish? And the student said, yes, I love fish. He says, no, you don't. Because I don't understand. If you love fish, why are you killing it and then eating it? That doesn't sound like love to me. So really what the student meant to say is I love the way fish makes me feel. Fish is delicious. He doesn't love the fish. He loves himself. The fish is an object of his pleasure. He's gratifying his desire for the tasty yumminess of food, of fish. So ladies and gentlemen, but really ladies, pay attention. Ladies, this is for you more than the guys. The guys need to know this too. They do. But ladies, especially for you. If a guy ever says to you, I love you, and you're not married yet, he might not love you. You might just be his fish. Okay? He's going to eat you up. And it's not about you, it's about him. He's getting the tasty, delicious morsel, and then you get, all the bad stuff that comes afterwards. And he gets to run away, free as a bird. Whee! Fly away, that was fun. That's why, as the very famous philosopher Beyonce said, if you like it, you got to put a ring on it. Okay. All right, back to our, you guys even know who I'm talking about, or is she too old for you guys already? It's high school kids. It's mind-boggling. All right, my oldest son is your age. It's hysterical. Yes, question, who's talking?
Ben,
what's up? Talk to me.
why is it that only before marriage that if you touch a woman, not all people are like able to, just have a woman fall for them and then just run away after you do some stuff with them?
Not all people are able to do that? I hope not. I hope there's good people who, that they want to commit, they want to have a relationship. I hope so. You probably are. You're probably a good person. If you're here in this class, you went through a process. Beit Yehuda brought you here. I'm sure you're a good person, right? But it's hard, but it's difficult. It's a hara. The body wants what the body wants. You ever hear they say the heart wants the heart wants? It's so stupid. It's not the heart. It's your body, your hormones. This feels so good. I want this. And at your age, hormones are even more, probably the most powerful than they're ever going to be in your life, except for women. When you get pregnant, your hormones become even more powerful, right? But as a general time of life, this is the most powerful hormones you have your whole life. Going from puberty up until when that process finishes, it's drives us crazy. I remember what it was. I remember what it was to be 17, 18, 19 years old, and a man. It's rough stuff, right? So Judaism says, if you want to have a clear mind and think about what's right, you don't touch. Is that easy to do? Of course not. And I didn't grow up religious, so I didn't grow up that way. I had to become that way. I learned that in my 20s when I first went to yeshiva. It's a huge challenge. I will never judge anyone because I know it's an incredible challenge. But if you're serious about having the best marriage you're ever going to have, then that's something you want to make a priority to work on in your life. It's just that simple. Okay. So let's talk about the last level. Okay, we got 6 minutes left. Yeah, let's talk about the last level. So physical pleasure is the lowest level. Yetzer Tov, become an expert. Yetzer Hara, just indulge. Love is the second level. Yetzer Tov, focus on what's good, knowledge of the person, giving to the person. Yetzer Hara, it's all for me. Just take what I want. Don't even worry about what they like. The only reason I even ask them a question is because I want to get something. It's like you see, this is like a very, very common thing. It's like a guy and a girl are talking, and the guy's looking at the girl like, the whole time smiling, nodding, right? And the whole time in the back of his head, he's like, when is she going to stop talking and we get to the important stuff? Right? Like, it's not about her. He's not paying attention. He couldn't care less about who she is as a person, her dreams, what does she want. He's just, he's a con man. And girls can do this too. I'm just saying from a man's perspective. I'm not trying to be sexist against men, right? It's a common thing on both sides. So if you're really, who are you? I want to understand you as a person, not because I want to get something from you later. That could really lead to love. Otherwise, it's lust. Just about me. I want to take. I want for myself. All right. Highest level. So if physical is the lowest, level 1, emotional is higher, level 2, then obviously level 3 is going to be intellectual. The greatest pleasures possible in life are intellectual pleasures. I have to explain specifically which one, okay? Because people who learned in yeshiva, or maybe had a chance to learn some Torah, maybe you had a chance, or maybe you love science, or maybe you love mathematics, and you've had a chance to use your brain and something that was difficult and you understood it, that was very, very pleasurable. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I mean by intellectual. I don't mean the pleasure of understanding something you didn't understand before. What I mean by intellectual is it's about purpose. Right, the highest level of what is my life about? Am I fulfilling my purpose? Sarah, I think it was you who said leading a meaningful life. Was that you, Sarah? Right? So Sarah, I love that answer so much. I want to come back to it now because really it's getting to the highest level.
I
Right?
said
And
find fulfillment in life.
fulfillment. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put words in your mouth. Right. But the
Don't
idea
worry.
of but you meant along those lines, right?
Yeah.
Like that was okay. That's because fulfillment and meaning usually go together. Okay, cool. So thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to misquote you. Please forgive me. So the idea of fulfillment. What does it mean to be fulfilled? So let's use Sarah's word, and I'll tell you that it's really the same thing. To be fulfilled means that I'm doing something meaningful. I'm doing something that has that is changing the world to be better, or changing myself, or changing my family. Like some of the other stuff that you guys said earlier, it's all part of the same process. So what makes something meaningful? What makes something meaningful is that it is bringing you closer to fulfilling a purpose. Right? If my I'll give you a money example. If my purpose is to make money, and I do something that brings me closer to making money, so in the context of the purpose of making money, that action is meaningful. Now, of course, the higher the purpose, the greater the purpose, then the greater the meaning and the greater the fulfillment. Making money for many people is not enough purpose in life. So they look for higher. So they want to save the whales or shave the whales. Some of them are hairy, I don't know. And some people want to feed the hungry and house the homeless. That's even better. Some people want to bring peace on earth. Wow, that's amazing. And so what's the highest purpose of all? Right? The highest purpose of all, of course, is to connect to God, according to Judaism, right? That's what we said earlier, to get the pleasure of connection to the God that created us, to Hashem. So what does that mean practically? Who said, and I forgive me that I don't remember, somebody said that our purpose is to become the greatest version of ourselves, or the best like that I can be. Was that Benjamin? It was Benjamin, right?
So yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm happy I remembered it was you, right? And then ultimately what Maximilian said, which is happiness, is what comes from that. Why? So let's put it all together. We were created, yes, it's true, on the highest level. We were created to be the greatest people we could possibly be, which is fulfilling our purpose of life, which is giving us life of fulfillment. And ultimately, true happiness comes out of that. Also, all of your answers, I told you they were good answers. I wasn't just saying this to make you feel good. It's actually true. They all come together. Why? Because when you become the best person you could be, that means morally good, ethically good, in every way, knowledgeable, wise, kind, all of the good qualities that the Torah describes and that we all kind of know intuitively when we think about it. When you become the best person you could possibly be, you really become good, a really good person. That brings you close to God. That's what the Rabbi Luzzatto says, Ramchal. He says, the better person you are, the closer to God you become, the more pleasure you get out of existence. It's very hard to be good. That's the Yetzer Tov. That's the Yetzer Tov. Be the best person I can be. Growth-oriented life. I want to be better tomorrow than I am today. I want to be better next year than I am now. In every dimension of life, I want to be more courageous. I want to be stronger. I want to be healthier. I want to be wealthier. I want to be wiser. I want to be more knowledgeable. I want to be smarter. I want to be kinder. I want to be every quality you can imagine, and probably 1,000 more you haven't thought of. As you improve those qualities, you become a better person. That is what actually gives you the greatest pleasure of all, the highest pleasure, the pleasure of coming closer to God, which is the third level, the level of purpose. So what's the Yetzer Hara? What's the Yetzer Hara? Well, in religious terms, I'll tell you, and then I'll explain to you what it means in practical terms. In religious terms, it's called Avodah Zarah, idol worship. Instead of worshiping God and coming close to God, it's worshiping idols. But what does that mean practically? I don't know how many people you know that bow down to statues or stuff like that. Okay? So the rabbis say, you want to hear something crazy? Listen to this. The rabbis say, what is the true Avodah Zarah? What is the true idol? It's your ego. Your ego is the true idol. When you worship yourself instead of worshiping God. When a person says, I did it through my intelligence, my efforts, my strength, without having gratitude to the Almighty, without putting in perspective and having humility, it feels pleasurable. the ego, if you've ever met someone who's a really egomaniac, why do people become egomaniacs? Because it feels good. It's me, I did it. You're nothing. Without me, you'd be nothing. If I didn't help you, you'd be in the gutter. I saved you. I did this. I did that. Me. People become so crazy with ego because it feels so good. Right? It's a pleasure, but it's a Yetzer Hara pleasure.
I have a
It's
question.
it's not real. Max, you're unmuted, right? It's not real. It goes away. It disappears, and not only that, but it pushes away people around us. So the Yetzer Tov is to really work on yourself to be a better person and to have gratitude to Hashem. That's why we're called Yehudim, right? Jews. The word Jew, Yehudi, means in Hebrew the people who are thankful, the people of gratitude. Why are we called the people of gratitude? There's a lot of reasons in Torah where that word comes from, but it really comes down to because that's how you become really a great person. If you've ever met somebody who is truly humble, like in a real authentic Jewish way, we're blown away by these people. They're so real, they're so authentic. We're inspired by them, we look up to them. That's what we want to become, those people. Not because we want to be looked up to, but because that's the greatest pleasure in life, is to become that kind of a person and to lead that kind of a family and to teach that to your students. There's no greater pleasure than that. But watch out for the Yetzer Hara, the part inside that goes, forget Hashem, forget anything. I'm not going to have gratitude. Me. Ever meet someone who didn't say thank you? Even though, like, why didn't you say thank you? That quality of lacking gratitude is the core of this Yetzer Hara. Instead of worshiping Hashem, I'm going to worship myself. So watch out for that. That's intellectual pleasure. That's purpose pleasure, the highest level of all. It's the most difficult, but if you can accomplish it, there's no pleasure in this world that compares. Okay, questions to finish off? I'm sorry I went to drop over Diana. My apologies. You guys were just asking such
No
good
worries
questions.
at all. No worries.
The guys were involved so nicely. I didn't want to rush them. Okay, anyone have a last question for me before I sign off for this evening? All right, thank you so much, everyone who answered and got involved. You guys are awesome. Those who didn't get involved this time yet, we'll work on get involved a little more in the future. It's good. It's important for you to put in your 2 cents once in a while. Don't be scared to get anything wrong. The only wrong answer is the one you didn't say. I mean, unless it's rude, I'm not talking about that.